Because unfortunately, the saying that leadership has its privileges is taken very seriously, and in a lot of ways, in ways that people don't even realize. Let me give you an example. Hi, I'm Dr. R, and welcome back to our discussion on the empathic leader. Last time with this two-part video series, we actually took a moment and talked about how empathy, sympathy, and compassion interact. Understanding that difference between empathy and sympathy is actually really important, most of all because sympathy can be taken in a very negative way, and that's not what you want. Plus, because you approach sympathy from yourself, you don't always understand what the other person is saying. There's a communication breakdown there. So it's important to understand that with empathy, you are in feeling. You are in the feeling of that other person, and that you need to be able to come to them on their terms, not on your terms. And it might mean that you feel vulnerable. It might mean that you need extra courage to be able to do it. But this is really important. Please remember to like and subscribe. Please remember to help me support this channel because I really want to continue to use this to flesh out ideas. And as part of this channel, I will be releasing a book in the fall. So please continue to help me figure all of this out. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. I'm happy to address them. So what I wanted to talk about this time is the actual antithesis of empathy. The one thing that can really just negate any empathy. Or on the flip side, the one thing that empathy can really negate. Remember how we were talking about how empathy, you have to be outside of yourself. You have to be able to be open and available to that other person. The opposite of that is entitlement. And I know this is a big buzzword in our society right now. We talk about it a lot, especially in terms of, I hear it used all the time in terms of the younger generations and, oh, they're so entitled and they just believe they should be given this. So since we're doing definitions, let's start by defining this. N, meaning in, titled, meaning that you're owed something by means of rank or privilege or station or gender, or race, or 100 million other things. But for whatever reason, because of something you are, you're owed something special. Now, usually when we use this term, it's an extremely negative, pejorative kind of term. Oh, that's since I was really entitled. But when it creeps in around the edges, really, it's not a malicious thing. It's just that we think we're owed something. One of the things that I've found where entitlement lies that isn't always taken very well is this idea that life is fair. Unfortunately, none of us are owed a fair life, and no one is entitled to a pain-free life. And that's really harsh. That's really, really hard. But it's true. Nobody's entitled to have a life that's easy and smooth, unfortunately. Where this comes into empathy. Entitlement, by definition, is a very selfish act. And when I say selfish, I'm not talking about bratty or spoiled or I only think about myself, but rather putting that sense of self into whatever it is that you're thinking and doing about. And that's very easy to do because we all live in our own heads all the time. You're always placing yourself into your environment, into your situations, into the people you socialize with. It's what we do as human beings. It's this idea that we're the hero of our own story. When you get out of yourself, you then have the ability to get in with someone else. At that point, you are no longer the hero of the story. You're the helper. This is really hard for some people to do. They have a hard time removing their sense of self and that ego from being able to help other people. But it's that important. As long as you are entitled and you are caught up in that sense of me, that sense of self, you can never truly have empathy for anybody. Why do I bring this up in the context of leadership? Because unfortunately, the saying that leadership has its privileges is taken very seriously, and in a lot of ways, in ways that people don't even realize. Let me give you an example. I was working through an organization, I'll put it like that, and they were affiliated with a local pro sports team. Now, because the local pro sports team's colors were red and blue, people were disallowed from being able to wear those colors at work at all. I mean, usually there's a certain amount of uniformity anyway, and you use certain colors, but specifically what I was told is it's because those can be seen as gang colors. So no red, no blue for anybody. Okay, that's the policy. Everybody's supposed to follow it, from the very, most junior person who just got hired yesterday all the way up to the CEO. Fine. But what happens when the sports team wins the big sport ball game? All of a sudden, the executives were showing up to work with their sports team branded socks and their sports team branded ties. And they had absolutely no compunction about it at all. Why was this okay? Because they were exhibiting executive privilege. They were entitled to wear these sports colors because they were executives. And the thing is there wasn't a bit of maliciousness in any of them. Nobody stood out to say, well, I am the leader, so I'm owed this. Not a single person would have done that. But subconsciously, they believed they were above the rules. They were privileged, and so they were entitled to it. This actually came to quite a head of steam, and eventually that policy was changed. But my point is that this is what happens when that entitlement gets in the way. They had absolutely no empathy for the fact that other people weren't allowed to do that. They were caught up in this, well, this is what I'm owed by virtue of my station, that they never practiced the empathy to say, well, this is kind of a big deal for us. People don't have sports teams that make it all the way to the end. Maybe other people would like to be able to celebrate this. As a leader, if you are going to practice empathy, and I said practice because it isn't something that's a one and done. It's something you do over and over and over and over and over again to get better at it, right? It's a practice. And if you are going to practice empathy, you need to understand why entitlement shoots it down every time. But conversely, that if you practice empathy and you practice it well and you make it actionable, you're going to take entitlement out of the equation, even that sneaky subconscious entitlement that creeps in around the edges. This is so important for the well-being of any organization if you want it to actually flourish and grow and get better and be bigger and broader. So let me ask you, are you the kind of leader that you believe strongly enough in your organization that you're willing to let go of that entitlement to create an empathic environment? Thanks so much for watching.